Charles Manson. The name alone evokes a visceral reaction, conjuring images of chaos, violence, and a darkness that gripped America in the late 1960s. His very name has become synonymous with the concept of evil, a symbol of the malevolent potential that lies within humanity. Manson's story is not just one of crime, but of a twisted charisma that ensnared the minds of his followers, leading them down a path of destruction. Even decades after his death, Manson remains a chilling reminder of the human capacity for evil, his crimes seared into the collective memory of a nation. The horrific events orchestrated by Manson and his followers have left an indelible mark on American history, serving as a grim reminder of how easily societal norms can be shattered. He was not a notorious serial killer in the traditional sense. He didn't personally carry out the gruesome acts that made him infamous. Instead, he wielded his influence like a weapon, manipulating his followers to execute his dark visions. Manson's ability to control and direct his followers to commit heinous acts speaks volumes about his manipulative prowess and the vulnerability of those who fell under his spell. Instead, he was a master manipulator, a charismatic cult leader who exerted an almost hypnotic control over his followers, directing them to commit acts of unspeakable brutality. His followers, often young and impressionable, were drawn to his magnetic personality and radical ideas, which promised a new way of life but ultimately led to their moral and legal downfall. The Manson family murders, as they came to be known, weren't just about the bloodshed, although the brutality was shocking. They were a manifestation of Manson's twisted ideology, a perverse interpretation of societal change and rebellion. The murders were intended to incite a race war, a concept Manson dubbed helter-skelter, which he believed would bring about an apocalyptic revolution. They represented a terrifying breach in the fabric of American society, a stark illustration of the dark undercurrents that ran beneath the veneer of peace and love that defined the era. The late 60s were a time of significant cultural upheaval, with movements for civil rights, anti-war protests, and a general questioning of authority. Manson exploited these tensions, twisting them to serve his own delusional ends. This essay will delve into the life of Charles Manson, explore the events that led to the murders, and examine the impact this case continues to have on our understanding of cult psychology and the nature of evil itself. By studying Manson's life and the tragic outcomes of his influence, we can gain deeper insights into the mechanisms of control and the susceptibility of individuals to charismatic leaders. This exploration will also shed light on the broader implications for society, highlighting the importance of vigilance and critical thinking in the face of manipulative ideologies. Charles Millers Maddox, later known as Charles Manson, entered the world on November 12, 1934, under a cloud of uncertainty and neglect. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio, his early life was marked by instability and hardship, setting the stage for a troubled future. His mother, Kathleen Maddox, was a 16-year-old runaway who provided a bleak and unstable environment for the young Charles. Kathleen's own struggles with alcohol and her frequent run-ins with the law meant that Charles was often left to fend for himself, lacking the nurturing care that a child desperately needs. He was shuffled between relatives and institutions, experiencing abandonment and neglect from a very young age. Each move further eroded his sense of security and belonging, leaving him feeling like an unwanted burden. The constant upheaval made it difficult for him to form lasting relationships or trust those around him. This lack of stability and affection profoundly impacted Manson, leaving him with deep-seated feelings of rejection and worthlessness. These early experiences planted the seeds of anger and resentment that would later grow into something far more sinister. The emotional scars from his childhood would never fully heal, shaping his worldview in dark and twisted ways. By his early teens, Manson's life had taken a turn for the worse. He began acting out, seeking attention and validation through increasingly rebellious behavior. His petty thefts and minor infractions were cries for help that went unanswered. Petty theft escalated to more serious offenses, landing him in and out of reform schools and juvenile detention centers. These institutions, rather than providing the guidance and support he needed, only served to harden him further. The harsh environments and punitive measures reinforced his belief that the world was a hostile place. The institutions, designed to rehabilitate, instead exposed him to hardened criminals, and further solidified his antisocial tendencies. He learned the ways of manipulation and deceit, skills that he would later use to devastating effect. The lack of positive role models and the prevalence of violence only deepened his mistrust of society. Within the structured environment of prison, devoid of genuine human connection, Manson discovered he could gain power and control through manipulation and violence. He began to see himself as a master manipulator, capable of bending others to his will. This newfound sense of power was intoxicating and would become a central aspect of his identity. This realization would prove tragically pivotal in the years to come. Manson's ability to manipulate and control others would lead to one of the most infamous and horrifying chapters in American history. His journey from a neglected child to a notorious cult leader is a chilling reminder of the impact of early trauma and the dark potential that lies within us all. By the mid-1960s, America was undergoing a profound cultural revolution. The era was marked by a dramatic shift in societal norms and values as young people across the nation began to question the status quo. This period saw the rise of the hippie movement, which championed ideals of peace, love, and freedom, and stood in stark contrast to the conservative values of the previous generation. The rise of the counterculture, fueled by anti-establishment sentiment and a yearning for peace and free love, created a fertile ground for charismatic figures like Charles Manson to thrive. These movements were not just about rejecting traditional values, but also about seeking new ways of living and thinking. The counterculture was a melting pot of ideas, where Eastern philosophies mingled with Western disillusionment, and where the search for personal enlightenment often led to the embrace of radical ideologies. Released from prison in 1967, Manson, now a seasoned manipulator with a warped worldview, found himself in the heart of San Francisco during the Summer of Love. This was a time when the city was a beacon for those seeking alternative lifestyles and spiritual awakening. Manson, with his magnetic personality and cunning intellect, quickly embedded himself within this vibrant community, exploiting the idealism and naivety of those around him. He adopted the persona of a spiritual guru, weaving together fragments of pop culture, pseudo-intellectualism, and twisted interpretations of the Bible to create his own bizarre philosophy. Manson's teachings were a chaotic blend of apocalyptic visions and promises of a utopian future, designed to captivate and control his followers. He presented himself as a messianic figure, claiming to possess the answers to the world's problems and offering a path to salvation through his distorted beliefs. This resonated with many disillusioned youths, searching for meaning and belonging in a world they perceived as increasingly chaotic and hypocritical. The late 60s were a time of great social upheaval, with the Vietnam War, civil rights struggles, and political scandals shaking the foundations of American society. Young people, feeling alienated and disenchanted, were drawn to Manson's message of rebellion and transformation. Manson offered them an escape, a sense of community, and a twisted sense of purpose, drawing them into his web of manipulation and control. He preyed on their vulnerabilities, using psychological tactics to break down their resistance and bind them to his will. Under his influence, these individuals found a perverse sense of belonging and identity, becoming willing participants in his dark and destructive vision. Manson's ability to manipulate and control his followers was a testament to the dangerous allure of charismatic leaders and the power of twisted ideologies. The Manson family, as his followers came to be known, was far from the idyllic commune it projected. What began with petty theft and drug use gradually escalated into more sinister activities under Manson's influence. He instilled in his followers a dangerous us versus them mentality, convincing them they were superior beings destined to inherit the earth after an apocalyptic race war, which he referred to as helter-skelter. To prepare for this supposed war, Manson commanded his followers to commit acts of violence, believing that framing black militants would ignite the racial tensions he craved. The murder of Gary Hinman, a music teacher who had refused to join the family, marked a turning point. This brutal act, orchestrated by Manson, served as a chilling prelude to the horrors that were to come.